I used to think that betrayal arrived loudly, with slammed doors, raised voices, and someone screaming that everything was over. I never imagined it could come wrapped inside a 3-minute voice memo labeled Mom and Dad, sent at 10:43 p.m. on a Tuesday night. My name is Lauren Hayes. I'm 32, and until that night, I believed I had already survived the hardest parts of my family dynamic. I grew up in Brookfield, a quiet suburb where everyone praised the Hayes family as solid, stable, and well-raised. They loved saying that my sister Madison was the creative fire of the family and that I, quiet, logical, disciplined, was the one who would be fine no matter what. What they didn't know was that being fine is just another way of saying no one comes to check on you. I live alone in Seattle now, in a minimalist apartment overlooking the waterfront. Clean lines, stainless steel, predictable routines. It was a life I built from scratch, piece by piece, mostly without anyone's help. 6 years ago, when my parents' firm, Hayes Strategic Group, was collapsing under a string of bad decisions, it was me who stepped in. I transferred $50,000, every cent I had saved from my first job in tech, to keep the company alive. Dad called me a partner. Mom called me a lifesaver. The paperwork named me 20% owner. After that day, they treated my investment like a footnote. So when I saw the notification from them that night, I assumed it was the usual, my mom's slightly tipsy check-in, asking if I had eaten dinner, followed by Dad's half-hearted chuckle in the background. It was a habit they'd developed, tiny, predictable performances of parental care. I opened it without thinking. The first thing I heard was the familiar clinking of silverware, the scrape of chairs on hardwood, sounds I hadn't heard in years, but could instantly place. They were at the dining table in Brookfield, eating one of Mom's Sunday-style dinners. For a split second, I let myself feel it. A tiny sting of nostalgia. The smell of roast chicken. The warm light from the chandelier. The illusion of togetherness. Then the tone shifted. Mom's voice dropped into the kind of secretive whisper she only used when she thought no one could hear. "We just need to get Madison cleared of that student debt," she said. "Once that's handled, her bakery can finally take off." My stomach tightened. I sat up straighter. There was a pause, followed by the soft thud of her wineglass hitting the table. Then she added, almost casually, "As for Lauren, she can take care of herself. She always has." I froze. The sentence was sharp, offhand, dismissive. It wasn't new. I'd lived my entire life under that label. But hearing it spoken out loud, gently folded between dinner plates and Sunday comfort, hit differently. Dad sighed. The kind of sigh he used when talking about a burden. "She chose that cold life," he said, voice low and tired. "You can't expect us to rescue someone who doesn't even want a life raft." Cold. A funny word for the life I'd built from sweat and stubbornness. A convenient label for a daughter who hadn't demanded anything from them in over a decade. A neat way to justify never showing up. The memo kept playing. I didn't breathe. Then Mom said the sentence that changed everything. "Bukoy la ban fun kofan bando ko Lauren, kugay la tai kochokakcha gon ho so." Last step is selling Lauren's initial shares. We'll call it restructuring. It'll look clean on paper. Dad hummed in agreement. "She won't read the details anyway," he said. "She trusts us. Trust." The word hit like a blade. I didn't remember grabbing my phone tighter, but suddenly my knuckles were white. I replayed the last 30 seconds again and again, as if I needed to confirm that two people could really speak so calmly while planning to cash out their own daughter's investment. My 20% stake, my $50,000, my belief in them. All of it discussed like leftover ingredients in Madison's bakery. When the memo ended, there was a silence so heavy it felt physical. I stared at the wall of windows in front of me, the city glowing, indifferent. And for the first time in years, I felt something inside me shift, slow and seismic. I wasn't angry yet, not even sad. I was simply awake. I moved with absolute precision. Years of writing code had taught me that when something breaks, you don't panic. You isolate, analyze, preserve. Step 1. I saved the voice memo to my secure folder. Step 2. I created an encrypted backup on my private cloud server. Step 3, the most important, I emailed it to my corporate-level work inbox using the subject line, insurance. When I hit send, the whoosh of the outgoing mail sounded like the click of a safety coming off a gun. I didn't call them. I didn't text back. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Those reactions belonged to someone who still believed there was a family to salvage. Instead, I sat alone in the soft blue light of my living room, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside, and I realized something with terrifying clarity. In 3 minutes and 19 seconds, I had learned the truth that had been hiding in plain sight for 32 years. They didn't accidentally send the voice memo to the wrong daughter. They accidentally armed the right one. I leaned back on the sofa, breathing slowly, my mind sharpening into something cold, clean, and controlled. There would be consequences, not loud ones, not emotional ones, strategic ones. Because if they thought I was cold, then for the first time in my life, I was ready to let them experience exactly what that looked like. The morning after hearing the voice memo, I woke up with that strange metallic calm people describe after walking away from a car crash. You're alive, but you're not the same person who got into the car. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen island, opened my laptop, and logged into the Washington State Corporate Registry. I told myself it was just due diligence, just a way to confirm the edges of the lie, but deep down, I already knew something was rotting beneath the pretty surface of my family's company. It took 3 clicks. 3 clicks to find a document filed 11 months earlier, a document titled Amendment to Partnership Agreement. My name was on it. So was Madison's, and right next to Transfer of Shares, my 20% stake had been reassigned to her. Reason for transfer: restructuring for estate planning purposes. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I forced myself to scroll down, and there it was. My own signature. Electronic. Flawless. Time-stamped. Undeniable. Except I didn't remember signing anything involving a transfer of ownership. Then the memory hit, a vague passing moment last winter when Dad texted, "Tax season, need your signature on a form. Just standard optimization stuff. Click the link." I was between product meetings, buried in deadlines. I clicked, I signed, I moved on. And they counted on that. For a moment, my vision blurred, not from tears, but from pure cold rage. But beneath the anger, something else stirred. The part of me that had written the original partnership contract 6 years ago. The part of me that, ironically, still believed in protecting what we built. I opened the contract, scrolled, found it, the clause, my clause, a full paragraph I had insisted we include back then, when I believed transparency was essential for family businesses. Any transfer of shares obtained through misrepresentation, omission, or manipulation of material information is considered fraudulent and will result in the automatic reversion of said shares to the original owner upon discovery or presentation of evidence. There it was. My insurance policy. Written by me. Ignored by them. And now, the accidental voice memo. Their own voices discussing how to sell my shares, how I would never read details, how they planned to disguise the theft, was the perfect evidence required to trigger the clause. Legally, I could take the company apart. Financially, I could bury them. But if I went to court, the headlines would write themselves, "Cold Daughter Sues Parents." Over money, family, torn apart by greed, sisters at war, over shares, no. I didn't want their destruction to come from my hands. I wanted it to come from their own words, so I texted the family group chat. "Lauren, are you free today? We need to talk. Maple brew at 4. Mom sent a heart emoji. Dad typed, "Sure, kiddo." Madison sent a string of exclamation marks like we were planning a birthday brunch. At 3:58, I walked into Maple Brew, a warm, cozy cafe tucked between a florist and an antique shop. The smell of cinnamon and roasted beans hit me like a memory I didn't trust anymore. They were already there. Mom waved. Madison threw her arms around me. Dad patted my shoulder. All of it felt like a well-rehearsed skit. We made small talk, the weather, Seattle traffic, Madison's bakery plans, Dad's back pain. I let them talk. I let them believe this was just another one of those forced family connection moments. Then I placed my phone in the center of the table. Mom frowned. "What's that, sweetheart?" "I have a recording," I said. "All of you should hear it." Dad chuckled nervously. "Recording of what?" I pressed play. Their dinner conversation filled the cafe. Mom's voice, Dad's voice, their words, their plans, their certainty that I would never read the details. Their belief that I didn't need support because I chose a cold life. Their decision to sell my shares to fund Madison's future. I watched it hit them. Mom's face drained of color. Dad stared at the table like it might swallow him whole. Madison clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles whitened. When the memo ended, the silence was suffocating. Mom whispered, "Lauren, honey, this isn't—" Dad murmured, "We can explain." Madison choked, Is that my money?" I didn't let them finish. "I just wanted you to hear the original version," I said, standing. "The one you didn't think I ever would." Mom reached for my hand. I stepped back. Dad began to cry, not the messy human kind, but the shocked, humiliated kind of crying that comes when you realize your mask has cracked in public. I laid a $10 bill beside my untouched coffee. "For the latte," I said, "and for the last time I sit at this table pretending we're something we're not." Then I walked out. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. A finance blog had published an article. Alleged fraud at Hayes Strategic Group. Internal recording suggests share manipulation. They embedded the audio. Anonymous source. And just like that, everything ignited. Clients froze contracts. Partners demanded answers. The board insisted on an independent audit. The Hayes name, once polished, glossy, admired, began to crumble. And all because they sent the wrong memo. Or maybe because, for the first time, the right daughter finally pressed play. The audit began 48 hours after the blog post went viral. I didn't have to push anything. I didn't have to make phone calls or stir the pot. Once the recording hit the public, the corporate world did exactly what it always does when it smells blood in the water. It panicked. Board members who hadn't called me in years suddenly emailed at 2 a.m. Partners demanded full transparency. Clients suspended million-dollar contracts without blinking. And under that pressure, Hayes Strategic Group finally did what it should have done 6 years ago. It turned to me for information. The auditors sat across from me in a glass-walled conference room downtown, stiff suits, sharpened pencils, the air thick with polite suspicion. "Ms. Hayes," the lead auditor began, "we're conducting a comprehensive review of all ownership changes within the past 2 years. Do you have any documentation you believe we should include?" I opened my folder. The original partnership contract. My contract. The amendment filed 11 months earlier. The time-stamped signature I had unknowingly given. And finally, the voice memo. When I slid my laptop across the table and pressed play, none of them blinked. They listened with the expression of surgeons observing a tumor on an X-ray. When the memo finished, the lead auditor closed his notebook. That will be sufficient. 3 days later, the findings landed. Transfer of Lauren Hayes' 20% ownership stake to Madison Hayes was conducted under conditions classified as fraudulent misrepresentation, violating Section 7.3 of the original partnership contract. The transfer is therefore void, and ownership reverts automatically to Ms. Lauren Hayes. One crisp paragraph. One legal exorcism. Madison's shares were canceled. My ownership restored. And the Hayes family name, once polished like a showpiece in Brookfield, shattered on impact. Within a month, they sold the house. Within 2 months, half the staff left. Within 3, the firm was running out of cash. And Madison, my sister, the dreamer, the boutique bakery visionary, became, in the eyes of the public, nothing more than a beneficiary of a fraud. The internet turned her into a meme overnight. The bakery built on stolen shares. The sister who took the shortcut. The cupcake queen who got caught. For once, I didn't feel guilty. For once, the consequences were theirs to carry. But then came the night she showed up. It was raining hard, Seattle style. Sideways, relentless, a blur of neon and water. I was working late in my new office, a small but quiet space overlooking the pier, when the elevator dinged. She stepped out drenched, mascara smeared, eyes hollow. "Lauren," she whispered, gripping the doorframe like she needed it to stay upright. "I need to talk to you." I motioned her inside. She stood there for a long moment, dripping on the polished concrete floor, before finally speaking. "I lost everything," she said. "The bakery investors pulled out. Mom and Dad, they're blaming each other, and me. I can't even walk into a grocery store without someone staring. Her voice cracked. "Tell me what you want. Money? A public apology? An interview? I'll say anything you want me to say." I studied her, the trembling lip, the swollen eyes, the fear. But beneath all that softness was something harder, something she hadn't noticed yet. Her dependence, her lifelong habit of waiting for someone else to clean the mess. I exhaled slowly. "I don't want your money," I said. She blinked. "And I don't need your apology either." She swallowed. "Then, what?" "The truth," I said simply. "I want you to face it. You didn't lose everything because of me. You lost everything because you relied on being the chosen one. Because you expected the world to hand you things the way our parents always did. Her eyes filled again, but I didn't look away. This isn't punishment, I said. It's reality catching up. Then I opened the folder on my desk and slid a single document toward her, a fresh contract. Her name printed clearly above a line for signature. She hesitated. What is this? 5%, I said. I'm transferring it to you. She stared like she couldn't process the words. Why would you, after everything, why? It isn't forgiveness, I said. It's tuition. She frowned. I continued. 5% will keep you in the room. You'll get the reports, you'll attend shareholder meetings, you'll receive dividends, and every time you see that number, I want you to remember the other 95% belongs to me. Not because I'm better, not because I won, but because I was the only one who ever understood the cost of that 20% to begin with. Her hand shook as she picked up the pen. This isn't mercy, I said gently. It's a reminder. Every month, every quarter, every year. Madison signed. When she looked up, there was no gratitude in her eyes, but there was understanding. For the first time in her life, she saw herself without the spotlight our parents had built around her. You didn't ruin my life, she whispered. I did that. I nodded. Good. That's the beginning. As she left my office, stepping back into the rain, I felt something loosen inside me. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but closure. A door gently shutting. She had signed the contract, but really, she had signed something larger. The acknowledgement that I was never the villain of this family, just the one who finally told the truth. It took 2 months for my mother to reach out. Her text arrived at 6:12 p.m. on a Thursday. Short and dressed in that familiar, polite distance she always used whenever she needed something. Lauren, can you have dinner with us? Arya. Saturday at 7. It will be our last family meal. Our last. The phrasing was so theatrical, it almost made me laugh. But I said yes. Not because I hoped for reconciliation, not because I missed them, but because every story, no matter how broken, deserves a clear ending. Arya was the kind of restaurant they loved, the soft lighting, the velvet chairs, the plates arranged like museum art. When I walked in, the hostess led me to a corner table where my parents already sat. No smiles, no warm greetings, just 2 people who looked like they'd aged 20 years since the audit. Dad's shoulders were slumped. Mom's lipstick was smudged at the corners. The illusion of the perfect Hayes family had evaporated, leaving 3 strangers in its place. We ordered quietly. The silence between us was heavier than the crystal glasses on the table. Halfway through the meal, Mom finally spoke. You won, she whispered, voice trembling. I set down my fork. I didn't win, I said. I just stopped losing. She flinched at that, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. Dad cleared his throat. We never meant for... I held up a hand. Please, we are past the part where intentions matter. He fell silent. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope, thick, crisp, and unforgiving. I placed it between us. Mom stared at it as if it were a weapon. What is that? A notarized copy of the anti-fraud clause, I said. You might need it if the other shareholders ever sue you personally. It's not for reconciliation, it's paperwork. That's all. I knew the weight of it would land. A daughter offering legal protection, not out of love, but out of closure, was a wound deeper than any public scandal. Dad blinked rapidly, eyes glassy. Mom looked away. That's very considerate, she said, but her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. No, I said softly. It's final. I stood. Mom reached for me instinctively, the way she might steady a glass before it fell. Lauren, she whispered, are you happy now? I didn't turn around. I have the truth, I said. That's enough. I walked out of Arya without looking back, letting the cool Seattle night air wrap around me like something clean, something earned. That dinner was the last time I saw them, not out of hatred, not out of revenge, but because some chapters aren't meant to continue. Some doors are meant to stay closed so your hands are free to build something new. And that's exactly what I did. 3 months later, I resigned from Hayes' strategic group. No press statement, no dramatic speech, just a quiet signature and a clean exit. With the capital and credibility I had recovered, I launched my own company, Memo Core Labs, a startup dedicated to data integrity, secure archival systems, and corporate transparency. Truth in its purest, most indestructible form. Every morning, I walk into our glass office overlooking Elliott Bay, and I feel something I never felt in my parents' boardroom. Ownership. Not of a percentage, but of my life. There are no family portraits on my walls, no childhood photos, no reminders of the roles they tried to assign me. Only the Memo logo etched into glass and a row of screens humming like a promise. On my private server, I still keep the voice memo, not out of spite, not as ammunition, but as a historical record. The moment my life pivoted, the moment I learned that truth is not a weapon but a boundary, a line between the person I used to be and the woman I became. Sometimes I listen to the first few seconds, the clinking silverware, the murmured conversation, and I feel nothing. No pain, no anger, just clarity. I was never meant to be anyone's afterthought. I was never meant to inherit silence, and I was never born to be a copy of the daughter they wanted. I was born to write my own script, and I did. If you've listened to this story from beginning to end, tell me, did it stay with you? Did it make you feel something? Should I continue creating more stories about women reclaiming their power, or would you rather hear tales of family secrets, workplace betrayals, hidden inheritances, or second chances? Comment below what you want next. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story from the women brave enough to share their truth.